So welcome everybody. I guess first off, Charles, congratulations on your first multifamily in June. That's fantastic. That's tremendous. Good job. Good job. Good deal. You'll have to share with us a little bit about, where it was, how you found it and stuff like that, maybe towards the end. So everyone, welcome. We have some people that are coming back, so welcome back. And then we have some new people as well. So this is Teaching Tuesdays. We started this back in January, kind of as a way to give back and introduce people to multifamily, whether they're brand new or maybe they have a little bit of experience and want to go to the next level, or maybe they have some single family experience but want to go to the next level where they want to start off with something small, 4, 5, 10 units, or move into something much bigger. The idea is to meet everyone's needs as best we can. So Nichole, introduce herself a little bit. So let me kind of just give a little bit more background on her. So Nichole has been doing commercial real estate for over 25 years, has been incredibly successful, has thousands of units spread out across 11 states. And we were talking today with one of our marketing guys, and it came up that, something, she's just damn good at what she does. So she is very, very good at what she does. We just never actually expressed it that way. So it was pretty funny. So anyway, Nichole loves to teach. And about 11 years ago, she decided that she was going to do just that. Try and share her expertise and her knowledge and help other people as best she could get to whatever level they wanted to. I mean, you don't have to get to thousands and thousands and thousands of units. Maybe you just want to get to 100. Maybe you just want a fourplex. It doesn't matter. It's all personal to you and what your needs are. And we try and address the needs that you want as best as we can. So she had a live class. And then about 6 years ago, I took it. And at the time it was live in person and it was phenomenal. But after like 4 days, you walked out and you feel like you got fed with a fire hose. It's like a glazed look, enormous handbook. It was just a lot of stuff. So anyway, we ended up getting along. We started doing some stuff together. And then right before COVID, we were really well known in the Baltimore, Washington metro area. But the idea was we wanted to be able to touch more people across the country and kind of share Nichole's teachings with them as well. So we took the class and basically rebuilt it from the ground up. And what was interesting to me is that even though it was 4 days, like 10 hours a day, with a couple of breaks in between when it was live, Nichole's comment was, "Oh, good, because I can't have enough time to teach everything I want to in those 4 days," which to me was flabbergasting because it was so much information. So now it is online. It is 60 hours worth of material, and it pretty much covers anything and everything you've ever wanted to or need to know to be successful in multifamily. Whether, again, you want a fourplex or you want 400 units or everything in between. We have a community, the Passive Cash Flow for Life community. A lot of our members have had great success. And they started off just like everybody else. They took the class, which is what this QR code is up here on the upper left-hand side. And right now, what we're doing is we're going to have kind of the one hurrah 4-day live class next quarter. So what we decided to do was kind of, because it's kind of special, what we'll do is if someone decides to take the online class, we will include the live class at no charge. So the only limitation is that the room holds 25 people. So if you want to be a part of that, which I recommend you all do because it's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, I would encourage you to sign up sooner rather than later, because once it's full, it's basically full. So that's about it. That's all I have. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Nichole.
Hey, thanks very much, James. As always, I appreciate the kind words.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of the third section that we have been talking about this property. So the first one, a couple weeks ago, we talked about acquisition, marketing and acquisition. And then last week we talked about actually raising the money through a syndication and what that entailed a little bit. And today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of some of the lessons learned with management. So this was a property from several years ago. So it has the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I thought maybe I wanted to just share a little bit of all of that. But then I've been hearing a little bit of feedback as it kind of, there's maybe too much bad and ugly. So at the end of this, I'm going to talk about one of the properties where the news is all good. And so I'm going to move it down. It was all on one slide deck. So I'm just going to scroll down here until we get to the um, managing the property. And what I want to talk about is so just to refresh people, this is a manufactured housing community outside. It's about 138 pads outside of Florence, South Carolina. And the gist of it was because it was in such distress, we had to buy it cash. So we had one investor who put up all the money because he wanted to be the only investor in the property. And but this was kind of got snookered a little bit. I had some learning some here about the um so the owner of the park was a good friend with the chief of police or a family member or something who told us there was no problems in the area, and it turns out there was a lot of problems in the area with drugs, alcohol, vandalism, etc. So one of the things I did want to touch on here for a minute is whenever we go into a new property, we use the business plan from the acquisition side, from the raising money side, to set up our strategic and tactical plans for implementing on the property. And the strategic plan is basically one or two things that we really need to get done fairly quickly. And then the tactical plan is, kind of what we're going to accomplish over a year or two in areas where we need to continue to work. And I'm going to show you an example of the tactical plan on this property here in just a minute, as soon as I get through part of this slide. But we always set the tactical plan up in 4 areas. We set it up with financial, which includes income and expenses and the things we're going to do to get the property where we need it to be financially. We set it up with customer related measures, things that are going to help in customer service, satisfaction, communication. We always have a couple of quality things that we need to do to start building the community. A lot of times they deal with safety and security. And then the last area is access to us, access to looking at the property, to talking to people, etc. Over the years, some of the key lessons I have learned is that you just can't do it all at once. I see again and again and again investors who have this list of things they want to get done, and they try and get a lot of it done in the first quarter, 6 months. And the truth of the matter is that just doesn't work most of the time because particularly initially when you are getting started with a property, you need to focus on the basics, on getting people caught up if they haven't paid, in making sure you have your financial stuff, that you have people getting paying their rent, any kinds of things you need to get done in terms of addressing deferred maintenance, things like that. So it's basically those things for the first 6 months or so that are going to make the trains run on time and run on time better. Then you can start kind of adding on. So what I would leave you with more than anything is if you're going to hold this property for 2, 3, 5 years, or you're a buy and hold investor, spread it out. Don't make don't make the mistake of trying to get it all done. You just can't do it all at once. And so one of the major things we were doing with this park when we bought it, because it was about 50% occupied, is that we had a lot of vacant pads. And so one of our key strategies was to start bringing homes in. And I'm going to stop sharing this one and I'm going to bring up the tactical plan. And please, somebody make sure that that you can see the tactical plan here. Everybody can see that online?
Yep, it's up.
All right. So this is just an example, and it can be anything you want it to be. So this is the Azalea Acres, and this goes back quite a ways, as you can see. So some of our financial things. So this is from 2011 to 2012. So this goes September, October, November. So here's the year we're talking about. And here's kind of some of the tactical. We're going to raise the rents. Over the year, we're going to buy 10 used or new mobile homes to start getting this up. We are going to increase the occupancy by 2 to 3 every quarter. So net. Now, you're always going to have people, particularly when you take over a property, you're going to have people moving in, you're going to have people moving out. Even the best you try, you're not going to keep everybody. Some people are just going to leave. And so you have, particularly in the first 6 months to a year, there's some churn. And that's just the way the game goes. And so what we're trying to do in the first year is be reasonable in terms of how much we're going to be able to actually increase this in the net over the quarter. So you can see kind of some of the other things. This property had no marketing. And so some of the things we need to do is start marketing to build this up. We need to start adding other streams. Here are some of the financial expenses. When we took those over, there was a lot of back rent owed. And our goal was to collect those rents. We were starting. So if you notice here where I have the X's, this is kind of where we're starting with this. When you are building a budget for a property, the first 6 months or so, I mean, we always go in with a draft budget, but we don't really hold to it very often because we don't really know how this property is going to perform and what it's going to need. And so while we start with something that a budget that looks somewhat like the previous budget did, we are going to add in certain places and decrease in others. But the fact of the matter is we're not actually going to start managing to the budget for 6 months or so, because we need to get the property stabilized. We need to see where it actually performs, where we need more money, where we don't. And so the first 6 months or so is kind of a pretend budget. We need to start repairing homes. This property had homes on it that were vacant and had been vandalized. And so when we got this, we were going to start doing some rehab on the homes. We were going to, the people we bought this from took all of their equipment with us, so we had to replace a lot of the equipment. So you can kind of see what we're doing here. So this one is resident satisfaction. So one of the things we're doing every month, so you can kind of see these hash marks, that means it's going on every month. Once we have an X here, particularly in red, it means it's one of the things that's a priority for us. And we always have performance measures. That's how we manage the properties. I have lots of properties over 11 states. And the only way I can actually manage managers, since I don't manage them myself, is to have goals and performance measures. And we manage to those performance measures. If we meet performance measures, if staff, not we, if the staff or the property management company meets the performance measures, they are bonused. So not only do we have goals and measures, but our bonuses and payments to staff is based on achieving those performance levels. And so whenever you see something in red, at least on ours, it means that that item is attached and drives directly to their bonuses. And so this one is to develop and implement a resident appreciation program with rewards. So one of the things we do in all of our properties is anybody who pays on time, their name goes into an on-time lottery sort of thing where their name is pulled out of the hat every month and they get a $50 gift card or a gas card or something like that, just for paying on time. A lot of you who've known me for a while kind of know that one of my fairly significant beliefs is that property managers and owners pay way too much attention to the people who are not paying to get them to pay. And so their focus is there. And we tend to ignore our good residents, the people we want to keep, the people who are keeping our properties the way we want to and who are actually helping us make more money. And so one of the things I do at all my properties, have my property management company put into place ways to recognize those residents who are doing what we need them to do, who are going, who are paying on time. And so we use thank you cards, we do bonuses, we do all sorts of little things. We'll do donuts. Sometimes we'll give them pizza, kind of not gift cards, but kind of money off kinds of things, coupons that that just sort of say thank you. And it works really pretty well. The average turnover in most apartments, mobile home parks, is somewhere around a year when you look at everybody. It may be a little bit longer than that since COVID, but our average length of stay is between 3 and 4 years. And I really think one of the reasons is because that we pay attention a lot to who we let in, and we pay attention to recognizing good tenants. So we do quarterly satisfaction surveys. So that says now quality and safety. So some of the things here are we wanted to have all of the vacant and unsafe homes either fixed up or gone basically within 6-8 months, right? We're going to walk through, we send out quarterly letters in our parks and in our apartment buildings. We do inspections quarterly, and we send out letters, either thank you letters or please fix it letters kinds of things. And then for access and communications, we're going to develop and implement a marketing plan to get the occupancy up. That was the big issue there. And business and infrastructure, we're going to create the tenant files. So when we walked into this property, there wasn't one tenant file. We didn't know anything about anybody. And so, and I don't know whether it was the guy who we bought this from had built the park and run it, and so he knew everybody, and he sort of ran on a cash basis, but he didn't leave us anything, and so we had to recreate these things. So if you kind of look at this, here's another item that's attached to the budget, which is get the county roads to start getting the county to grade the roads in our park, um, to clean up and mow lots, brush hog everything. So this property was really pretty much a mess when we bought it. So you're kind of getting a sense of what it is we set up in the action plans. And if you were to go back and look at this, there's some things that are ongoing, but we have 2 or 3 things to be focusing on every month. And that's enough. You have people trying to turn a property that has a lot of hair on it, so to speak, around. And their focus needs to be on just making the trains run on time. And some of this other stuff we're doing as we can. So I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to go back to the slides. All right. So we didn't do it all at once. We talked about managing to the budget there. We talked about the things that ended up in both the strategic plan and the tactical plan were things that we thought we needed to do when we set up the business plan for the property. So all of this is stuff we do routinely and it's good. The downside for this property is that we, like I mentioned, we didn't really know the extent of the drugs and crime in the area and the vandalism. Even though we tried to do our homework, we didn't get the correct answer. And like I told people a couple of weeks ago, I went back and fixed my due diligence checklist to make sure that we had more than one source for trying to understand what's actually going on. So we had crime almost from the start, right? And so these are lessons learned that we can turn around a property, but I can't turn around a neighborhood. So if the neighborhood is in a bad area, even if you have a good property, it's going to be affected by the negative stuff. The other thing we learned is that one of my partners, who's still one of my partners, has been for about 20 years, she was trying to do the property management from this property. And one of the lessons learned was you can't have the property manager manage from a distance unless you have regional managers and somebody who can keep their fingers on what's going on. Some of the things we tried to do, it helped a little bit, is we offered one of the police officers a home in the park to offset the break-ins. Worked to a certain extent. It was hard because this was kind of an area that for good property managers, let me back up for a minute. So one of my lessons learned a long time ago was people who are good at managing apartments are frequently not good at managing manufactured housing communities. And people who are good at these tasks don't particularly want to be in areas where there's a lot of crime and they don't feel safe. And so it was hard for us to keep on-site managers. And so we went through a lot of managers. We also retrospectively probably weren't paying them enough to deal with some of this stuff. And we probably had too many priorities once we ended up figuring out what was really going on. We also had an on-site manager who stole from us, and she was really pretty clever. So she actually had a receipt book made that had the name of our company on it. And she would take cash, even though that was against our rules, and she would write them a receipt from Azalea Acres. right? And she would still show that they hadn't paid. So we started trying to do collections. These people said, well, we did pay, and here's the receipt. And so that was one of the impetuses that started me down the road to basically get the rent payments out of the hands of the leasing agents and the on-site managers so the money goes directly into a bank. And this year we finished that with all of our properties. Nobody is paying rent um, to the property management company anymore. We have online things people go to 7-Eleven or Walmart if they don't have bank accounts, etc. So I think those are the things that I really wanted to kind of highlight here. It's a 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna take and talk here just a little bit about a property that did do well, and I'm just gonna hit the highlights here. So this was a property I bought about the same time. It's in southern West Virginia. I'm not going to hit, in the interest of time, it was 15 units in a bar, and I bought it for $240,000 in 2007. It's still relevant because we just finally this year in 2023 ended this property. So it was a small repositioning that needed about $3,000 a unit to turn it around. I got a loan from the bank for the entire purchase price, and then I bought in about 38,000 to do the upgrades and fix things plus the closing costs. Because I live about 5 hours away, what we did setting up this, because it was a small repositioning or rehab, is that I and the property manager found the construction company to do the work, right? And I did the scope of work of what needed to be done, and I shared that with the bank. And I set up the draw schedule, but the bank, because they had their money involved in this, I put this money in the bank. They sent out their person to inspect the work before they would approve the next draw. And that worked surprisingly well because contractors, banks are not likely to want to hear. I mean, those of us who don't do rehabs all the days hear these stories and oh, okay, I know this happened, and we'll give you another draw. And so sometimes there's a lot of push to have your rehabs where the money gets ahead of the work, but banks don't much care. You do the work, you get the work done, and we'll give you the money. You don't do the work, you don't get the money. And so that worked surprisingly well. It was one of my first ones, and I have used that in several other properties since then. Right. Okay. So on this one, I don't want you to pay attention so much to the actual cash flow because it's not very good. But what I do want you to pay attention to is the cash on cash return. Cash flow puts money in your pocket so that you can quit your job. Cash on cash return is what builds generational wealth. And so if you kind of look at this, I'm sorry, I've got stuff in the way here, is that the potential gross rent was only 69,000. Expenses were about 50%. Debt service on this was 21,000. So our cash flow was only about 13,000 a year, which only was $69 a month. But if you go over here and you look at the amount of money I actually had to bring into the deal, which is 43,000, and I got 13,000 back, that's a 30% cash on cash return. If you get an investment where you have a 30% interest rate, that's pretty good, where you get 30% back on your money. So that's what these little deals do. So I've got two more slides really quickly. So in 2020, the rents are up. We refinanced this in 2017 for a second time. Now, commercial real estate, if you remember, has about every 5 years you have to refinance it. It has to go back through refinancing. So it is the second time we did this. I took $90,000 out in cash to do other things. So I had free money. If those of you who remember, it's borrowed money. You don't have to pay taxes on borrowed money. So this is $90,000 I had to do other things that I didn't have to pay taxes on, right? So it was, now my mortgage is up, but and our expenses were about 58%, but that included a new roof, gutters, etc. So our net operating income was only 38,000 and the mortgage payment was 1,700. So we only had about $15,000, right? But I want you to think about is that how much money I had to put into this deal was about $43,000, right? And I took $90,000 out in cash to do other things with. So now I've got no money in this deal. It's free money. So now I have, so even if I don't have great cash flow, I have all my money out and it's free money. So now we're talking about this last thing in 2023. So this I've been doing with my partner, Miranda, down in Southern West Virginia for some time. She had bought several years ago some of the my ownership in this. And I sold her in August, just this year, the last 45% interest in my property here, right? I'm sorry, in 2017, she'd bought 45%. And I had been receiving $500 a month from her ever since that. And still we got the other thing. So now, even though the cash flow for this, because of this refinance, is only $15,000 a year, I'm getting $500 a month from her, which is about $6,000 a year. I just sold her the remaining interest for $150,000. Now remember, we still have a bank loan on this. And so this is basically how much equity I have in the deal at this point, right? So I sold it to her at 4.5% interest for over 25 years. And she's taking over all of the debt on the property. And so what this looks like is that now remember, she's been paying me $500 and that loan hadn't been all the way paid off. So this $833 is a combination of the $150,000, what she still owed me, and that's on every month for 25 years. And with the interest, that's a payment of a little over $200,000. So she can cash me out in 15 years if she wants to. And at that point, there's a remaining balloon payment of about $80,000. So this little deal is an example of a property that, never made a lot of money in terms of cash flow, but in terms of cash on cash return and growing wealth, this is kind of the picture of what you would like to, what you can do if things work. So I think this is a home run in a lot of ways, not in terms of the cash it puts into my pockets, but in terms of how much free money I've really gotten out of this over the past several years. I think it's a good case study. And at this point, I'm going to talk for just a minute. That's kind of it. If you want to know more about what we do, you can go to this passive wealth webinar. And if you listen to it all the way through and are interested in taking the course, it gives you about a 25% discount that you're not going to see any other place other than on this webinar. The next two are one is our website, and then if you have questions, you can go to send an email to support at Passive Cash Flow. And this is our YouTube channel. Every Teaching Tuesday that we've done ends up on that YouTube channel. And there's a playlist of all of our Teaching Tuesdays. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to let James kind of finish that out if he has kind of anything to say, and then we're going to take questions. And I know I ran over time. I just was feeling bad about all the bad news. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and open it up for questions.
So we have a small enough group if you guys want to just unmute. I will say that I've seen this example many, many times. And the first couple of times I was like, wow, something that's not really a lot of money. But then you start looking at the actual study or the process or the strategy. And I guess what you have to look at is, okay, great. It's a little 15 unit in West Virginia somewhere. So maybe that's not for you, but maybe you can find a 50 unit or a 75 unit or a 40 unit or whatever it may be. And the prices, this from a long time ago. So the prices and rents and stuff like that are going to be a lot higher. But I think you would be hard pressed to find any deal anywhere that's going to return 30% cash on cash to you and take out basically twice what you put into it and continue to cash flow, because to her point, it's free money. So at that point, it's not 30% cash on cash anymore. It's infinite cash on cash. And I think I don't know if you guys get it, but at the end of the day, that's really how you create wealth, right? Continuing to have cash coming in all of the time and growing that cash over time. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but if you guys have questions or something, please feel free to unmute or put them in the chat, whatever works for you. And it can be about this. It can be about strategies in general. It can be about anything multifamily related that you would like to get some advice or answers on.
And I really would encourage people to talk and to ask questions, please, because we're trying to build a community, and would really like to be able to have people be able to communicate and grow this and have people kind of having dialogue. So if any of you have any thoughts about this or how you would have done better or questions, I'd love to hear it.
I'd just like to say thank you for really explaining cash on cash. That's the first time I've ever really understood it. And just the way you showed it made it clear as could be. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's kind of you to say. Thank you very much.
Hey, Nichole, how long did it take before you realized that you couldn't manage that remotely?
I think we held that about 3 years, and I'm a buy and hold investor. And so, but we kept not getting anywhere. I mean, we made a little money, but most of the money we made, frankly, went to the investor because he was the one that needed to get paid. He put up all the money. And so he got, I think, about a 10% return on his money annualized. And we ended up with maybe 1 or 2%. And so it did not go like the business plan thought it would by any stretch of the imagination. And I think I've had 1 or 2 other properties that have been the same story over the many I have bought, but not everything goes the way you want it to. And so I thought maybe there was some benefit in sharing things that went well and things that didn't go well. So we didn't hold this. I think we held it for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. And then we just sort of said, this is just never going to be what we thought it was, and get out while we can. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, please. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. Thank you for sharing. This is awesome. I guess my question is, if you were to start over right now with given the current like state of things and market mortgage rates and everything, how would you approach it?
Are you talking for commercial or for any real estate?
For commercial, yeah.
All right. So the two things come to mind. One, I would start looking for smaller properties in tertiary markets, in the third level market. Those properties never went up so much. You are seeing them being offered at a 9 and a 10 cap now, 8.5, 9.5, which is better than most of the bigger markets. Also, because of the way commercial works, is that you will get a loan from a bank, and making this up, for to be paid back over 20 years on a 20-year AM, but they are balloon every 3 to 5 to 7 years. And every time it balloons, you have to go all the way back through underwriting. And I'm going somewhere with this. So because commercial property was selling at such insanely crazy prices, they were being sold at a 5 cap, 4, 5, 6 cap rate. And now that interest rates are so high, when those loans come up for refi, you're going to be seeing, I think, lots and lots of loans where people are the bank will say, sure, we'll refinance it. You just need to bring in a couple $100,000 to offset that for the interest. And the interest rates are going to be significantly higher. So we, and a couple of our properties, before the interest rates went up, we scrambled to get, even though it was early, to get refis done because you could see us coming. And so we were getting in at 4.5 interest, and now they're 8.5, 9 in the commercial world in some places. Now they're coming down a little bit for the kind of the CNBC kind of world, but they're still 7.5 to 8. So I think there's going to be a lot of properties that are on the market. I think there's going to be an opportunity to, if you have some money to invest, to buy some of that, buy yourself in and buy some equity. I think there is going to be opportunity to take over properties. Just kind of step in like you do in the residential, but you're going to have to make really, really sure about what the refinancing terms are, and that you're going to be able to do that. I think there's going to be opportunity to, I think there's a lot of opportunity coming down. More so probably in the smaller 5 to 20 unit kind of range than in the bigger ones. Having said that, I just saw an article from what is it, Morgan Stanley, that they think that that retail and office are going to lose as much as 40% of their value. And residential is going to be down too. So I think that it's by the end of 2025, there is about $2 trillion of mortgages coming due that are going to have to be refinanced. So I think it's, there's just a lot of things I think right now I would be finding a couple of small tertiary markets that need rentals, and I would be on a yellow letter campaign. I'd buy a list of small multifamily owners and be sending out yellow letters. Some brokers aren't going to be taking these properties, I don't think, because they can see the writing. It's going to be really hard to sell them at a place where the seller can get his money out. That answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so. Thank you.
You betcha. Other questions, please?
So if nobody else has a question, I know you were saying that when you refinance, you can have the opportunity to pull some equity out and get extra cash. How often do you do that? And is there like a threshold or a percentage? I know like a lot of people do that on the single family homes, and when they pull too much equity out and then they start, and then they get themselves in trouble, or the exit strategy starts having less of exit strategies and things you could do with the houses once you do that.
I think that's a really good point, Sharon. Right now, it's going to be really tough to do any cash out refis, just because mortgage rates are up and banks are really skeptical about doing that with such a change in the interest rates and the markets. But when you do, so on this property that I just talked about, I've done one cash out refi. And I think that's, one or so is about, I think, where you want to be. I don't think you want to keep doing it. One of the things that I've always used as a measure to figure out where I'm going to be is a debt service coverage ratio, DCR, debt coverage ratio, debt service coverage ratio. And that is, once you have all of your income minus all of your expenses except your mortgage and interest on the mortgage, that ends up being your net operating income, right? Okay. So from that net operating income, you have to be able to pay the mortgage and the interest on the mortgage, and you have to have some cash flow, some buffer, some things to put in your pocket. So the measure that banks and I use to figure that out is the debt service coverage ratio. And what that basically is the mortgage and interest divided, or it's the cash flow rather, divided by the mortgage and the interest. And it's going to be one and some fraction. So as an ease, let's say I have $1,300 NOI and my mortgage is $1,000, right? So 1,300 divided by 1,000 is 1.3, right? That's a DCR of 1.3. So I have 30% over what my mortgage is. So I have 30% buffer in this property, right? Banks generally, when they're lending, they want to see at least a 1.25 to 1.3 DCR so that there is a little buffer. One of the things that happened in 2007, 2008 is that they were making loans on a 1.1 DCR, 10% over. Well, you have one extra bill and now you're cash flow negative, right? And so that's the number I also use. I'm never going to take more out than what my new mortgage and interest and cash flow is going to be, so that I don't have a DCR of at least 1.3 to 1.4, because I'm trying to be conservative. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm hoping people followed that because that's a really important thing. And you can do the same thing with residential. It's the same concept. What percent do you have over once you've paid the mortgage and interest? So what is the DCR on that single family house, right? It's a little tougher if you only have one house because it's either rented or it's not. And so it's a 1 or a 0. But once you have more than, more than 1 or 2 or 3, it's the same idea of the DCR. Get that? Okay. We have a broker here in the room. I'm trying to remember what your name was. You're on mute.
Mark, you're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, my name's Mark
Mark.
Sorensen.
So what would you have to say about that?
Well, I agree with the banks that they're, minimum 1.25, like you said, to 1.3. Private sources will go down to 1.1. And I do have private sources that'll do 1.0, 1-to-1. If you can. So, the money's out there, but people are a little bit panicked in the market. Not everybody's sure they want to jump in at this point. And we do have some good refinance programs. We have one program that if you have a rental property with a minimum of 5 tenants, you can keep that first mortgage in place at 4.5%, and you can take out equity up to 75% the value of the property at the higher rate without having to take out that first mortgage. So we've got some unusual programs right now that are available from, private sources, not banks. Banks are kind of shutting down.
Yeah, they sure
which
are.
is kind of a self-fulfilling process. The harder it gets from the banks, the more they promote a turn down in the market. You need to have that liquidity. So private sources are stepping in.
I think you're right. That's a good comment. I always want to keep in mind that your overall debt should have a DCR of 1.3 or better to keep yourself safe. I know that the people that you're working with, Mark, are not like this, but believe it or not, there are some people out there who would love to loan you lots of money so they can get the property. Right? They're just going to, and so we need to be kind of careful and keep our eye so that we are a little on the conservative side. Now, I am not a big risk taker, Mark, so you got to know that. I'm kind of sitting there on the conservative side because I don't want to
see
lose
that.
my properties. Yeah. So I make no apologies for it. It's worked very well over 25 years.
So the advice I give to people is if you're going for that thinner debt service coverage ratio, make sure you have at least 6 months reserve on hand.
Yeah, good.
In case you go negative, you need to have some cushion built in, even if the lender's not requiring it.
That's a really good point. I think that's about the time. I'm going to kind of hand this over to James to finish up and then to introduce our residential speakers. Thank you so much for listening and being, and I hope you come next week. Next week, we're going to talk about the topic next week is kind of when do you explore a deal further and when do you walk away? So we're going to try and talk a little bit about some of those kinds of things, because some of the best deals I ever did were the ones that I walked away from. So, all righty. James, over to you.